So the question, how did the Khalifa have set the infallible aside, have consolidated his power, and became the absolute monarch, and made all people pledge allegiance to him, and he becomes the vanguard of religion? How did that happen? There are three important factors, brothers and sisters, that we need to keep in mind. Number one is the Islamic conquest. After the Prophet had asked his followers is to kick mushrikeen, out of the Arabian Peninsula. Said there is no more mushrik in Arabian Peninsula. But he did not, give orders for further conquest. But right after the Prophet, the conquest started. The Khalifa would send his, missions, his soldiers and the army to go and liberate more and more of the land. Now, this conquest coincided with influx of booties, treasures, and good things that get into the Islamic empire. Now, what people would see? They would see that God, at the hand of this noble man, the Khalifa, is advancing the religion of Islam. He must have a connection with Allah. He must be a noble person. He must be a sacred person. Otherwise, God would not help him. Now, the infallible is staying at home. He had a self-imposed house arrest. He, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Hassan and Hussein were sitting at home. Those newcomers to Islam, those who declare their Islam, when they come to Islam, what would they see? Would they see Ali ibn Abi Talib anymore? They wouldn't see Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is a great hero of Islam. This is the one who participated in more than 80 battles with the Prophet, has defended Islam, the one that the Prophet has said, لولا مال خديجة وسيف علي بن أبي طالب لما قام للإسلام عمود ولا اخضر للإيمان عود. That without Ali ibn Abi Talib, Islam could stand up. Would people know this giant? No, not anymore. People would come and only see the Khalifa. The Khalifa will be boasted. The Khalifa will see that he's getting the boost. The influx of treasures, people's welfare is getting better, more people are becoming Muslim, and he is staying at the helm of power. He would consider himself, he's the successor of the Prophet. He would call himself Khalifatu Rasulillah. In some incident, he would call himself Waliyu Rasulillah. In another incident, he called himself Amirul Mu'mineen, the master of Mu'mineen. Even more, during the time of Umar and Uthman, they would call themselves Sultanullahi fil Arth, the rule of God. Would anybody doubt? Would anybody would say, no, you are not? When they see all this huge success for the Islamic empire, people are doing well, everybody is abiding, people are becoming Muslim, they would consider that this person is sanctified person. Look at Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. In his sermon, number 414, he said, ثُمَّ نُسِبَتْ تِلْكَ, talking about the Islamic conquest, when they liberate other lands. ثُمَّ نُسِبَتْ تِلْكَ الْفُتُوحِ إِلَىٰ آرَاءِ وِلَاتِهَا وحسن تدبير الأمراء القائمين بها فتأكد عند الناس نباهة قوم وخمول آخرين فكنا نحن من خمل ذكره وخبت ناره وانقطع صوته وصيته حتى أكل الدهر علينا وشرب. He said that Ali's name has gone to history. No one would even dare to mention the name of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Who's Ali? Now it is the Khalifa. Now it is the army commanders. Those are the ones who are governors. Those are the ones who tell people how to pray. They are the ones who tell them how to do the fasting and how to conduct themselves. So that was number one. Number two, brothers and sisters, it was when the Khilafah, when the government prevented circulation and publishing of any hadith, any narration from the Prophet. Anyone who dare to say that I have heard the Prophet saying such and such will subject himself to a severe punishment. Among them was Abu Dhar. Among them was Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Among them was Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah, the great supporter of Bani Umayyah, He used to be beaten up by the Khalifa. Once he would open his mouth, the Khalifa would tell him no. According to the first Khalifa, Abu Bakr, he himself, he said that I had 500 of the narrations that I have heard the Prophet, 500 narrations of the Prophet, I have collected them and burned them out completely, destroyed them. I asked my daughter to burn them completely. For 35 years, none of the companions could dare to say anything about the Prophet. Why would they do this? What was the reason? What was in the mind of the Khalifa? In the mind of the Khalifa, because he was with the Prophet, he knew for 25 years, 23 years, the Prophet every day would mention Ali ibn Abi Talib. Every day would talk about Ahlul Bayt. Every day would remind people about the stature of Ahlul Bayt. If he would leave people to talk freely, to speak, to delegate those ahadith, then people would tell him, why are you staying in power? It is the time of the Ali ibn Abi Talib. It is the turn of Ali ibn Abi Talib because he was appointed by Rasulullah. Therefore, a smart and intelligent and shrewd move to eliminate all ahadith. To say none, there is no ahadith. Anyone who would say it would be punished by law, punished by the government. So that was the second reason. And the third reason, at the same time, asking people not to narrate a hadith under the table, fabricating a hadith in favor of the adversaries of Ahlul Bayt, fabricating words in the mouth of the Prophet. That has, brothers and sisters, has started during the time of the Prophet. When the Prophet was alive, people would, say bogus and fabricated ahadith, about him. Where one day he said that, in one hadith, says that, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ لَقَدْ كَثُرَتْ عَلَيَّ الْكَذَّابَ. The Prophet, peace be upon him, says that, oh people, there are so many people who lie about my words, what I am saying. فَمَنْ كَذَبَ عَلَيَّ مُتَعَمِّدًا فَلْيَتَبَوَّأْ مَقْعَدُهُ مِنَ النَّارِ. Whoever makes a bogus, a fabricated of hadith, he have reserved his seat in Jahannam. Now, what they would do, in front whatever there was a hadith in behalf of Ali ibn Abi Talib, they match it with a hadith for his adversary. If the hadith would say, Hassan wa Hussein Sayyida Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, they would say that such and such Sayyida Kuhuli Ahl al-Jannah. If the Prophet says, Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha, they say that, the Prophet has said, I am the city of knowledge, and so are the windows of this, this city. And fabricating so many names. Those newcomers to Islam, those who came to Islam, like people in Sham, after the Prophet, they became Muslim. Would they be able to hear anything about Ali ibn Abi Talib or Ahlul Bayt? Nothing. One narrator, one historian, his name is Yahya Sukkari. He said, one day I entered the masjid, the masjid in Damascus, the Masjid al-Amawi, the big masjid, the grand masjid in Damascus. He said that I saw the Friday sermon giver, the man who was giving the Friday sermon, started cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib, using a profane language, foul language against the son-in-law of the Prophet. He said, I couldn't take it. I was so ashamed of myself. I was so dispersed. I'm sorry. Whatever was it. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I meant to say disturbed. So he said that I noticed a humble, a decent, a respected man, an old man, is praying at the corner of the masjid. I said, this man seems to be a man of God. Let me go and tell him about this. He said, I went and told him, did you hear what this man have said? He said, what did he say? He said, he said, I told him that he cursed Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, don't worry, there are things even worse than that have happened. One day I have heard someone is attacking Aba Muhammad. I told him, who's Abu Muhammad? Told him, you don't know Abu Muhammad? Abu Muhammad al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Those people are attacking him, let alone Ali ibn Abi Talib. Who's Ali ibn Abi Talib? People of Sham, in their mind, was Muawiyah is the son-in-law of the Prophet, was the cousin of the Prophet. One day, it is narrated by al-Dhahabi, one day a man came to Muawiyah and said, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulallah. He told him, you Rasulullah. And Muawiyah didn't object. He said, wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. This is the agony, brothers and sisters. This is the people who could not discern who was the cousin, who was the household of Rasulullah, and who was the enemy of Rasulullah. Those were all the fabrication at words, brothers and sisters. Those fabrications of ahadith that were made, many of them, thousands of them, were to denigrate the Prophet, to attack the personal, stature of the Prophet. You see, according to the Sunni school of thought, the followers of Sahaba school, they don't believe in the fallibility of the Prophet, except when he delivers the message. Why? Why wouldn't they believe in that? Because there are so many narrations where, in those so-called sahah, to them, those sahah are too worthy and too authenticated to be disqualified and challenge them, in support of the Prophet. To them, the Prophet is as is. Why? Because those sahah, they never lie. Those great books of narrations, they never make a mistake. They are telling the reality. Unfortunately, many of those narrations were made by Bani Umayyah to denigrate the Prophet, to attack him personally. You wonder, how did Salman Rushdie wrote his book, The Satanic Verses? Do you wonder, this Coptic filmmaker who made the movie about the Prophet, you think that those were from their own sheer fantasies? No, brothers and sisters, we have to admit, do you know what they did? They went and opened the books of Muslims. They read the books of Muslims, the true authentic books that more than 85% of Muslims adhere to those books. They said, those are your books. We are bringing these ahadith from your books, and we are making those movies. I will recite a few of them, not all of them, just 2 or 3. And please excuse me. It is intended for mature audience, but we have to say it, brothers and sisters. You have to understand. At that point, you understand why Imam Hussein alayhi salam has revolted. Here, I read the first one. Sahih al-Bukhari. Bukhari is the first book after Kitab Allah. In them, the most authenticated book is the book of God. Next to that is Sahih al-Bukhari, and they call it Sahih. When they Sahih, meaning that everything is complete and correct. Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 2, page 11. It says that حدثنا عن فلان عن فلان عن عائشة. Says that أبا بكر إن أبا بكر دخل عليها وعندها جاريتان في أيام منى تدففان وتضربان والنبي متغش بثوبه فانتهرهما أبو بكر فكشف النبي عن وجهه وقال دعهما يا أبا بكر فإنها أيام عيد وتلك الأيام أيام منى. He said that during the time of Mina, days of Mina, meaning the Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Qurban that we call it. He said that one day Abu Bakr enters upon Aisha, and Aisha had 2 ladies who've been, a drum, what do you call it, a drum beating? Drumming and hand clapping and dancing. Abu Bakr said, do you do this at the house of Rasulullah? Look how, zealous Abu Bakr is about the religion of Allah. How he, was so feeling the shame of this. So he tells his daughter, do you do this at the house of the Prophet? While the Prophet is covering his head, the Prophet removes his cover and said, leave them alone, Abu Bakr. They are enjoying, now is the time of Eid. Let them celebrate. Let them celebrate. They want to raise the level of Abu Bakr, but at the expense of whom? to denigrate, to stab the Prophet. You want to lie about your own man? Lie, but not at the expense of the Prophet. Make your own lies, but not at the expense of, the noblest man, the greatest creature in the world. This is one hadith. Wallah, believe me when I say this, I shiver and I sweat, because no ordinary man would say this. No ordinary man would talk about his own affairs. It says that again about Aisha. This is Musnad Ahmad. This is Sahih Muslim, volume 1, page 169. Again, talks about this again. عن منصور عن أمه عائشة قالت كان يتكئ في حجر رسول الله وأنا حائض فيقرأ القرآن. While I am in my period, excuse my language, the Prophet would sit in my lap and he would recite Quran. Would any ordinary man talk about his wife? Any person, an ordinary man. Would he talk about his family affair in front of public? Even worse, even worse. Wallah, I am ashamed to say this, but we have to say it for the history, to know why Abi Abdullah al-Hussein has sacrificed his blood. To see the reason, here it is. In Musnad Ahmad, it says, عن عائشة أن, this is volume 6, page 123. عن عائشة أن رسول الله كان يقبلها وهو صائم ويمص لسانها. While they were fasting, the Prophet with his wife would engage in French kisses. This is on, Musnad Ahmad. Even worse this. It says that كان النبي, again, this is page, again, volume 6, page 113 of Musnad Ahmad. كان النبي يباشرني وأنا حائض ويدخل معي في لحافي وأنا حائض. Another one. إذا حضت يأمرني فأتزر ثم يباشرني. The Prophet would have intercourse with me while I am in my period, while I would cover myself. Would anyone who have the slightest shame would talk about himself or talk about his friend? Isn't that denigration to, do we curse? Now, when someone make this movie, millions of people in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Saudi Arabia, and all wa Muhammadah. We want to do this, do it to your man. To those people. Those did not bring those rubbish things, those dirty things, those filthy things from themselves. They brought it from your own books. Read your books. Why would this has happened? Why they have kept quiet, brothers and sisters? Do you know why? So anytime someone will hold the Khalifa, told him, Ya Khalifat Rasulullah, why are you womanizer? He would tell him, so was the Prophet. Tell him, Ya Khalifat Rasulullah, why would you stand up and urinate? He said, the Rasulullah used to do. Why you become a pedophile? He told him, Rasulullah was this. Justifying their own action at the expense of whom? At the expense of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Those were the fabrications of hadith. The Khalifa would play in any way he want. He would say that today you have to pray this way, everybody would pray this way. Next day you have to pray this way, everybody. In the trip, you have to pray for anyone who travels according to the time of the Prophet. During the time of the Prophet, according to Quran mandate, you have to break your prayers. All narrate that the third Khalifa, while he was in a travel, he used to pray 4 rak'ah. Now ask 1.2 billion of Muslims. When you travel, what do? Do you follow the Prophet or do you follow the third Khalifa? Whom do they follow? Do you see the landmark, how the landmark of religion has changed? You see how the features of Islam has changed. Abu Darda, one of the great companions of the Prophet, he said, he was with the Prophet. He said, I entered the masjid of Kufa, or in Medina. I entered Medina, the masjid of the Prophet. In Medina, after the demise of the Prophet, I didn't recognize any of those prayers. Wallah ma a'rifu min ummati Muhammadin shay'an illa innahum yusallun. The only thing that I know that they perform the prayers. But what kind of a prayer is this? Nobody knows. Where did this prayer come from? How did it evolve? How did the Hajj evolve? How did the fasting evolve? Salat al-Tarawih, where did Salat al-Tarawih came from? Who have injected all of those? It was the absolute monarch who have bestowed upon him the shadow of sanctity. People would see the Khalifa of the Prophet equal to the Prophet, equal to Allah, divine words. Anything that the Prophet would say, they would put it right on their head. Anything he would say, this is a sheer fact. They cannot deny it. They cannot object it. So many ahkam during the Prophet was allowed, and they say it, yet the Khalifa comes and abrogates them. And everybody follows the Khalifa. Why? Because he had this shadow of sanctity. The Khalifa to them is sacred. Now comes to Hussein. What did Hussein ibn Ali do? He grabbed this status of sanctity of the Khalifa and hit it to the ground, and it broke it and shattered it into half. You tell me, how did he do this? You see, brothers and sisters, Imam Hussein alayhi salam was seeking for a golden opportunity. People would follow the Khulafa. Even after the Khulafa, they would follow Muawiyah. Muawiyah was very shrewd, very cunning person. Again, he wears the mantle of the Prophet, the dress of the Prophet, acts in public like a prophet, but inside he was a corrupt man. No one could see it. But when Yazid came to power, Yazid was an all-out kafir. He would declare his blasphemy. He would attack Ali ibn Abi Talib. Not only Ali ibn Abi Talib. He would ridicule those who pray. He would ridicule the Prophet, peace be upon him. In his famous words, he would tell his companions, get me some alcohol, get me some wine. I need to drink some wine. They tell him, why? You Khalifa, you're the king, you're the successor of the Prophet. You would drink. He would say this: دع المساجد للعباد تسكنها وقف على دكة الخمار واسقينا ما قال ربك ويل للأولى شربوا بل قال ربك ويل للمصلين. Go, get me some drink. God didn't say that those who drink will go to hellfire. Have said musallin, waylun lil musallin. Those who perform prayers will go to Jahannam. Those who drink would not go to Jahannam, inshallah. Inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Brothers, I know I've gone more than 1 hour, and my apologies. Tomorrow morning, inshallah, we will have this program. Right, we will start 9:45 sharp, inshallah. Everybody will attend. Afterward, we will be having, the story of the martyrdom of Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam. I will try to say it in English and Arabic. And then Brother Samir, Haj Samir, will be with me to help me in Persian, inshallah. And then we will conclude by the noon prayers. Now, go back to what I have said. Yazid was a kafir. Now, Imam Hussein alayhi salam knew that if he revolts, Yazid will kill him. Muslim ummah are hypnotized. Muslim ummah are in deep sleep. They don't realize what the ruler does. But if they see that Yazid will kill the grandson of the Prophet, at that time they will be jolted. At that time they would recognize there is something wrong. This Khalifa cannot be a sacred man. This Khalifa cannot be holy. This Khalifa cannot speak about God. He cannot be the spoken person of God. He cannot deliver and vanguard the landmarks of religion and faith. He has to be, a corrupt person. That's what has happened to brothers and sisters. Imam Hussein sacrificed his life on the day of Ashura, so people recognize that Yazid, the Khalifa, is not appointed by God. Khalifa is not a sacred person. Khalifa cannot speak, in behalf of religion and God. That's why you see after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, how many forms of sect came? Hanafi, Hanbali, Shafi'i, Maliki. When did they appear? When did they appear? Did they appear during the first Khilafah? No. Why? Because at that time the Khalifa used to to govern under the name of God. But after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, people recognized that there is a big separation between government and between the religious authority. Religious authority has not to be the same. That's why we say that Imam Hussein alayhi salam has saved the landmarks of Islam, has saved the features of Islam. Otherwise, if Imam Hussein have kept quiet, Yazid would become spokesperson of Islam. He would say Islam such and such, and after Yazid, people continue, on the same path. But Imam Hussein have brought an end and a stop, to this thinking. Afterward, you see the school of thought in the Sunni Islams. We're not talking about Shia. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The followers of Ahlul Bayt have been guided from the first day after the Prophet. I am talking about the majority of Muslims. What Imam Hussein did in favor of the majority of Muslim was more than he did for the Shia, for the follower of Ahlul Bayt. Because Shia had known who was Hussein, had known who was Ali ibn Abi Talib. They would take their ahkam, they would take their laws and regulations from Ali ibn Abi Talib. But it was the majority of Muslims, those 85-90% of Muslims who are totally oblivious, who don't know who is Hussein, who was Yazid. Imam Hussein have brought an end to that. That's why the narrator says, the sha'ir says in his poetry, he says, وَبِعِزَّةٍ قَعْسَى خَاطَبَ نَفْسَهُ يَا نَفْسُ لَا تَهِنِي بِنَصْرِ الدِّينِ أَعْطَيْتُ رَبِّيَ مَوْثِقًا لَا يَنْقَضِي إلا بقتلي فاصعدي وذريني إن كان دين محمد لم يستقم إلا بقتلي يا سيوف خذيني. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. That's why Imam al-Sadiq, his beautiful words at the beginning that I said, he said, فَأَعْذَرَ فِي الدُّعَاءِ وَمَنَحَ النُّصْحِ. Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura has given his advice to nation, has provided his advice to وَبَذَلَ مُهْجَتَهُ فِيك. He has provided the blood of his jugular vein in your way. Why? For what reason? لِيَسْتَنْقِذَ عِبَادَكَ مِنَ الْجَهَالَةِ. To get them, to save them from ignorance, sheer ignorance. وَحَيْرَةُ الضَّلَالَةِ. They had no idea what they were doing. Imam Hussein have salvaged them, have taken them away, from this. Brothers and sisters, if it were not the blood of Imam Hussein, if it were not the sacrifice of Imam Hussein, I swear by God, nowadays 1.3 billion Muslims, each one of them would have an idol in their home and would say, "U'lu habal, u'lu habal." But it was the blood of Hussein alayhi salam who reverted it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one who have showed us the road. All of you know the story when Ibrahim ibn Talha came to Imam Zayn al-Abidin after the battle of Karbala and told him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, who won the battle? Your father or Yazid? Zayn al-Abidin told him, wait a few minutes. When the adhan will be raised. Once the adhan was raised, Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Zayn al-Abidin looked at this man and told him, Ya hada, Yazid wanted to demolish the name of Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah and the name of Rasulullah. But it was the blood of my father who has kept it. Yazid, when he saw the heads of Imam Hussein and his group, he said he was happy, so happy. He said, ليت أشياخي ببدر شهدوا جزع الخزرج من وقع الأسل فأهلوا واستهلوا فرحا ثم قالوا يا يزيد لا تشل قد قتلنا القوم من ساداتهم وعدلناه ببدر فاعتدل. Then he says, لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي نزل. Bani Hashim were so smart, who have played in politics. Otherwise, there is no revelation, there is no God, there is no heaven, and there is no hell. This is the successor of Rasulullah. Nowadays, you go to Muslims Yazid, they say, radiyallahu anhu, radiyallahu anhu. This is the mentality of people, brothers and sisters. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, through his revolution, he topped his revolution. You see, when you take a gift, when you bring a gift to someone who's valuable, you pack it. Then on the top of that gift, you put a rose. Imam Hussein alayhi salam put his rose, the sacrifice. His sacrifice, when he gave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he put his rose on top of that. When he declared to his sister, ناوليني طفل الرضيع, I want my infant son. my little son Abdullah al-Radi'. He knew. Imam Hussein alayhi salam knew the outcome, what they would do to him. But he wanted to show the world, to show everybody, to show history what kind of people Bani Umayyah were. He took the son and said, Ya qawm, in kana li dhanbun fama dhanbu hadha al-Radi'. If I am guilty, if I am the one who's fighting, what is the guilt of this little infant? Don't you see him? He's dying. People started, there was a chaos. Some would say, give him water. Some would say, no. All of a sudden, Umar ibn Sa'd looks at Harmala and tell him, Harmala, stop this quarrel, end up this argument. Harmala said, what should I do? He said, don't you look at the shining throat of this little baby. Harmala said, I have aimed at him and I threw the arrow, penetrated his throat. He says that Abdullah al-Radi' got his hand out of, his clothes and hugged the Imam, hugged his father. The Imam brought him to his sister Sukaina. Sukaina told him, Dad, have you given my brother water? Is there anything? He said, Haki akhaki madbuhan. He has been slaughtered. Imam at that time was left with no one. He goes and takes his sword, and he takes his sword and his horse to say goodbye to his family. He said, Ya Zainab wa ya Kulthum wa ya Rabab wa ya Atika wa ya Sukaina alaykum minni salam. This is the last time I am saying fi amanillah with you. I am bidding farewell with you. As he is leaving, he tells them that you will be protected. God will be saving you, will protect you. Stay in the tent. As he is leaving the tent, on his sword, Zainab comes and holds him, tells him, Ya Aba Abdullah, wait. He returns back, who's that, Zainab? Yes, Ya Aba Abdullah, brother, I want you to step down from the horse. What is it for? She tells him, come down. As he came down, she tells him, open your chest. As he opens his chest, she puts a kiss right on his throat, and then she looks toward Medina and said, Assalamu alayki ya Ummah, ya Fatima. I have done what you have asked me. Hussein told her, what is this? She told him, on the last day of life of Fatima, my mother, when I was alone with her, she grabbed me and told me, my daughter Zainab, you will find your brother lonely in the desert of Karbala. I want you to place a kiss right on his throat. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everyone, السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته.